The Montreal Canadiens came very close to trading defenseman Jeff Petry at the NHL trade deadline. Will those conversations continue on once we hit the official offseason? Plus, speaking of the offseason, we could also see some other significant moves, including Patrick Kane of the Chicago Blackhawks, and several goaltenders appear to be possibly on the move as well, including John Gibson, Mackenzie Blackwood, and others. We have some significant injury updates and a few signings from college hockey. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot of NHL news and rumors to discuss here today. First up, I want to talk a little bit about some significant injuries impacting teams as we complete the final stretch of the regular season and get ready for this last playoff push from many NHL teams, including Tampa Bay Lightning defenseman Ryan McDonagh, who's going to be out indefinitely. So that's certainly a big blow to the back end of the Lightning. Of course, they've been facing some pressure coming up from the Boston Bruins, who are now moved up the standings here as well, giving teams like Tampa and Toronto kind of a run for their money for those top three spots. And at this point, it was looking for the longest time that the Bruins would be a wild card and Tampa and the Leafs would be 2-3. It's not so much like that anymore. So injuries may play a critical factor here in some of these teams' success down the stretch. So certainly want to keep an eye on that. Vegas is certainly continuing to deal with his fair share of adversity as well. Max Pacioretty apparently suffered a setback and is not going to be available for any time in the near future, was the words of head coach Peter DeBoer. So that's certainly not good news. Pacioretty, along with Mark Stone, arguably their two top goal scorers and point producers. I mean, Jack Eichel will become that as well here over time, but certainly having those guys out of the lineup has been crucial, not to mention the goaltending and the other guys as well. Riley Smith, another one of their key forwards, has been officially moved from injured reserve to long-term injury reserve, which does open up some cap space in order to bring some players back as well. So certainly some big moves there in Vegas. I mean, they continue to stay in the hunt, though. Evgeny Dadonov really, like today again, continues to be red hot ever since the trade or the voided trade. I mean, clearly that's a situation that motivated him. He scored the overtime winner today in their comeback victory. So certainly nice to see them not only welcome him back, but how he's responded. There was an interview completed through, I believe it was Jesse Granger of The Athletic, talking to Dadonov about the whole situation and how everything transpired. It doesn't really sound like he really holds much of a grudge, but to be honest, if he did, I don't think he'd say anything right now anyway, considering he's still a member of the organization and still trying to help them win. Maybe someday he'll say something further, I don't know, but sounded like it was, a stressful and confusing time for him, but otherwise, he's happy to stay in Vegas and doesn't seem to have any hard feelings. So things are certainly working out, and he could be a very important piece for them going down the stretch here. I know that was strictly a cap-motivated move, but at the same time, this team has struggled to score, and he's been one of their hottest scorers as of late. So taking him out of the lineup, even for that short time while they were sorting things out, was certainly an impact. And we'll see how much of a positive impact he can have now that he will remain with the Vegas Golden Knights. Certainly an interesting story to watch here for sure. Of course, we had some key signings as well, a couple of big ones, especially in Canadian teams here in the last couple of hours announced, including Montreal and Toronto. The Habs have finally officially signed one of their top prospects on defense for Northeastern. Jordan Harris has a 2-year entry-level contract. Of course, he's 21 years old, so depending on their age is why they sometimes get their shorter ELCs. If you're a little bit older, 21, 22, 23 years old, you can get either 2 or 1 year entry-level deals in some cases. So Harris, of course, the left shot defenseman, was originally taken by the Habs back in the 2018 draft. He's been playing at Northeastern University. Of course, Marc Bergevin would have made that pick along with his staff back when they were running the Habs organization. There was a lot of concern that Harris wasn't going to sign. I mean, up until even as early as last offseason, there was a lot of rumblings that Harris may not want to go to Montreal. Now, I'm not sure what the reasonings were. Maybe he saw the team where it was in the current decor and didn't really see a path to get quickly to the NHL. I really don't know what the thoughts were. That's just speculation. But still, Ken Hughes and Jeff Gorton get the job done. I know some people have been reluctant to give them credit here because there wasn't a draft pick of Harris, but at the same time, it's still an asset they had to manage and get signed. And Ken Hughes, if you want an advantage bringing him into the organization, he's well aware and has a lot of relationships with a lot of hockey players within the college hockey scene, especially in the northeastern U.S. and the Boston area as well. So certainly connection there. Obviously, he has a son playing in that scene, and not as well as Marley St. Louis too. So there's certainly a lot of connections there. That certainly probably didn't hurt matters, that's for sure. Whether Harris would have signed anyways, we'll never know. But he certainly appears to be a nice looking prospect that could be a big help to their blue line and should be able to join the Habs here. I think it's going to be in the next couple days. I don't know exactly when he's going to play his first game, but it shouldn't be too far in the future. And the Maple Leafs, of course, have signed former Harvard captain Nick Abruzzese as well. 2 years on an ALC for him. He's currently 22 years old. Had some real solid stats with Harvard. Obviously a center iceman. Could be a real good prospect for them. I know there was probably a little bit of concern he may not sign in Toronto as well, but it wasn't really as apparent. It wasn't as much in the news as the Harris situation was, but Kyle Dubas did meet with him recently. I believe he was at his last game, talk things through, and they get a contract signed. So a couple of important prospects there for the Habs and the Leafs under contract, and we should be able to see their debuts in the not too distant future. Now, as we talked about as well, we have some trade rumors to talk about here as well, just because the trade deadline has come and gone. As we know with the Dadonov situation, one, it doesn't mean we won't see trades, but number two, more than likely there's a lot of rumbling starting to heat up for what we're going to see in the offseason. A lot of these teams' seasons will come to an end here in a few weeks' time. There's not a lot of regular season action left, so once the official offseason kicks off for the half of the league that's going to be out, you're really going to start seeing and hearing things kind of pick up for what they're expected to do in the offseason as they try to deal with all their contracts and get better for next year, etc. So a couple things we want to look at is the Montreal Canadiens were reportedly very, very close to trading Jeff Petry at the NHL trade deadline. We know the defenseman had talked to the Habs about potentially wanting a trade, more for family reasons than anything else. Obviously, the team struggling probably played a role in it to some degree, but a lot of it is family driven, and the team was open and to the public about it. They were really willing to accommodate, but of course it's a business. To accommodate, they have to get the right deal. But Ken Hughes himself went on record indicating that there was a team that was extremely interested and they came very close. They just couldn't find a deal that was, ideal for both sides. So many expect those conversations to pick up and continue once the Habs season comes to a close here. Clearly, Petry comes with some term and some money on his contract, in his mid-30s. It's not the easiest deal to do, but as he's proven more so under Marty St. Louis recently here, of course, now he's hurt too. He's going to be out a little while, which is not going to probably help us trade stock a little bit, but hopefully he can get back a bit before the end of the season here. But he's going to be out probably a week or two with an injury. But Petry has played much better and certainly shown that he can still be very effective, which obviously helped get teams interested, etc. But we know the Montreal Canadiens are going to continue with their construction of this rebuild or retool, whatever we want to call it here with the Habs. We saw a lot of work done at the deadline, and a lot of work is going to continue into the offseason. They can shed themselves with that Petry contract. They also likely are going to be moving the contract of Shea Weber. Not a given that they do it, but there is a decent possibility they might be able to get some good returns for it, with the Arizona Coyotes maybe wanting it to be able to help get them to the cap floor. So we know the Coyotes are going to have some issues to deal with the roster and free agency and all the things with the arena and everything like that. So this is kind of a contract will be helpful to them, and if they're willing to pay a good enough price, then it benefits Montreal to move it along. If they ideally don't want to be in LTIR anyways because they're not accumulating space, so it's not really to their advantage in a way to have that contract. I mean, there are situations when it can be beneficial, but generally speaking, it's not the team's ideal way to manage their salary cap. So we do expect the Habs to continue with the changing of the guard here in this team. The Petry deal, we don't know what the team was. I would suspect maybe the Red Wings. I would think maybe to a degree Dallas. If Dallas does not re-sign John Klingberg, I would think they'll be in that mix. But I think the Red Wings are a real possibility as well, which would probably be an excellent fit for Petry from a family perspective too. So I fully suspect those conversations to continue and something to get worked out either at or ahead of the NHL draft here coming up this summer. Now, as I mentioned as well, the Blackhawks, we know they're going to be a very interesting team to watch as well. They continue to go down their rebuild mode, and there's a lot of talk now that they've made other moves that guys like Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane very well might be more willing than at least than they were before to possibly waive those no-move clauses and move on this summer. They enter the final year of their matching $10.5 million contracts. We know, listening to comments from both of them throughout this season, if it's any time it's come up, there really was not much of a desire to really move on, and not that I expect him to come out publicly and say that anyways, but with all the moves they've made, they've been a little bit more open lately, saying that it's certainly something for the offseason to have discussions about, talk to Kyle Davidson, the GM, the direction of the team. It's 1 year under contract, so what's going to happen after that? But, there's some big questions. So we do know now that they both represented by the same agent, which is one of the top agents, or the top agent in hockey, which is Pat Brisson. Brisson is expected to meet with Hawks GM Kyle Davidson in the very near future, I believe as early as the coming week, to discuss the future of both Hawks superstars, which will likely, kind of gauge what they want to do. If the Hawks make it clear that they're very much like to find a way to move on from them in the offseason, then clearly they're going to have no choice but to work with the players and the agent here, because they have all the leverage on where they might be willing to waive a new, or take a trade to on their no move clause. So clearly, Pierre LeBrun writes about this in The Athletic here today as well, and kind of his words were teams would be drooling at the idea of acquiring Patrick Kane, and I have no doubt about that one. Jonathan Toews, to be honest, I think will be a tougher deal to move if the team decides it would like to do that, and there's no guarantee either player is going to accommodate, and I think, to be honest, I don't know, but I would think Kane might be the more likely one to go. Toews, I'm not sure. I mean, he had, although that recent interview he conducted with Mark Lazarus in The Athletic after post-deadline, he did seem to be a lot more, I'm not sure if I want to say you want to use the word frustrated, but certainly, I guess, to a degree, not acknowledging, I guess, that, it might not be as much of a fit in the organization, and certainly concerning, with one more year left on his contract, what's he going to do? He's gone through a lot health-wise and stuff, everything too, in the last couple of years. I really wonder what his playing future holds, in general. Patrick Kane is still playing at an extremely high level. I think he could be an extremely productive player, and maybe we'll see him, maybe not next year because he'll be on his current contract still, but after that, would he sign more of a team-friendly deal, take a little less money in his older years here to have a shot at, trying to gain another cup or two before he calls or quits? I don't know. I mean, he's still, he's been a guy who's been able to stay relatively healthy, and he's a guy who's still extremely productive. Like, I know the Rangers are the first team that pops to mind. They might be able to work out something if he would be willing to go there. I mean, he is, from the state of New York, so certainly might be interesting to him. I know a lot of people at some point figured he might want to play for the Sabres, but I don't know if he'd want to do that given where they are right now. Yes, things are looking up in Buffalo, but they're certainly a ways away, and from being a real, playoff competitive team, contender, etc. Like, we're nowhere near that right now. So I don't know how he would feel about that. But certainly Kane appears to be at least more willing to entertain the idea, and with the agent talking to Davidson this week, I think we'll probably find out here in the not too distant future what their thoughts are and where things might be heading in the summer. Now, as I mentioned, there's going to be probably a lot of goalie movement. There's some goalie rumblings around the deadline that we never saw completed, just like Jeff Petry, but trades were being discussed. And we have information to suggest guys like, John Gibson, for example. I don't know, I can't say that we can say that new GM Pat Verbeek was shopping him in Anaheim, but they were certainly getting calls. A lot of other teams saw the direction the Ducks were going with the massive sell-off we saw with Manson and Lindholm and Raquel and Delorier, and they're like, okay, this team's clearly heading full rebuild here. They have a lot of prospects and a lot of younger players that fit the mold for the next generation of Ducks to kind of take it back up a level. But Gibson's getting to his late 20s on a longer-term contract. It could be a while yet before they're, real competitive. Is that something that they really want to hang on to? Does he want to, for starters? How does the team feel about it? And they were getting trade calls. That's been confirmed by numerous NHL insiders. So you have to think that it's something that, conversations are being had. I know one team that a lot of people brought up, and I can't confirm if it actually was something that took place or not, but there was a lot of talk about the Edmonton Oilers exploring, especially where they will have more flexibility this offseason with Koskinen's contract being up. They don't have to bring back Mike Smith. Like, they have more goalie flexibility. They could make it a point. Now, they may have to move money elsewhere. I don't know sure how they're going to do it exactly, because they do have a lot of big money contracts with a lot of tied up cap space, but we'll see how their playoffs go and kind of go from there, but they were a team mentioned. I know another guy like James Reimer. Of course, the San Jose Sharks brought in Kakinen from Minnesota. They still have Aiden Hill and Reimer. Reimer is having a real solid year. It was surprising in a way they never traded him because I think they could have got a good return, but goalies are less likely to be moved at the deadline, so I don't know. We'll see what happens there, but Reimer is another guy to watch this offseason. Mackenzie Blackwood in New Jersey, I've seen reports. I know on the Cold Stove podcast, they have a lot of inside info as well, and they've talked about there the fact that the Devils are losing a lot of confidence in Blackwood's ability to be a starter. Been injured a lot. They've gone through a tough season with him. They also have Bernier as well, who had hip surgery and may not be back. It's hard to say. Hip surgery is so hard on goalies. I don't know what his future holds, but it wouldn't be shocking to see the Devils go shopping and do a complete revamp in the goaltending department. So Mackenzie Blackwood, I think, still has a promising NHL career. It's not looking as guaranteed that it's going to be as a starter. That's all. It might be more of a backup or more of a 1A, 1B where he can play a little bit less, but certainly having a starting role with a less experienced or less, accommodating backup goalie who can take on a bigger role might not be for him. So I don't know what they do, but it's quite likely that the Devils revisit that for sure in the offseason. I think the New Jersey Devils are going to probably, doing a little bit of a facelift as well. Pavel Zacha is another name that was in play at the deadline, had a lot of conversations, but never pulled the trigger. But the other guy, too, to watch in the offseason for goaltending, and I think we'll have to see how playoffs go. But the St. Louis Blues are going to be very interesting to watch too. This is not really an inside info on NHL reporters. It's just my own analysis here. But you get Ville Husso, who's arguably been the best St. Louis Blue goaltender this year, who's a pending unrestricted free agent. And then you get Jordan Binnington, who's been basically kind of slowly losing his starter's job. And we'll see how they do in playoffs. If they get beat out early, I don't know what direction they're going to go in. I think the Blues have really, before Binnington even took the job from Jake Allen a few years ago, the Blues expected that to happen with Ville Husso first. He was the guy that was being groomed. It just took him longer to get there than they ever anticipated, but he is getting there, which is great news. And of course, now they got Binnington on a longer-term $6 million contract, which I know I wasn't fond of from the get-go, and it could be a scenario where they may look to move him as well, as much as they, obviously have, a lot of respect for him and helping them bring their team's first Stanley Cup. Between the salary cap management and everything, it's going to be tough to keep that around if he doesn't, have a phenomenal playoff. He may not even start game one. I don't know, right? So another goalie to watch this offseason as well. So that is all your news and rumor updates for now. Let me know your thoughts on anything discussed down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.